That's the good news.
Und wir beginnen heute mit Mr. James Taylor. Er wird uns erzählen vom Umgang mit Klimaalarmismus in den USA. Nur noch ein kleiner Hinweis, also für diejenigen, die Übersetzung gerne haben, der Kanal 1, also Channel 1 ist Englisch, Channel 2 German, Kanal 2 hören Sie die Sachen auf Deutsch. Herr Taylor ist Präsident der Spark of Freedom Foundation. Das ist eine Stiftung, die darauf abzielt, die öffentliche Politik durch die Förderung freier Märkte, erschwinglicher Energie sowie allgemeinverständlicher Energie- und Umweltlösungen zu beeinflussen. Und er ist Senior Fellow für Umweltfragen des Heartland Instituts. Außerdem Herausgeber der Environment and Climate News, einer monatlich erscheinenden Zeitschrift über Wissenschaft und marktwirtschaftliche Lösungen zu Umweltproblemen. Er ist Autor zahlreicher Aufsätze und auch Bücher. Er studierte Wirtschaft und Atmosphärenforschung am Dartmouth College und er ist präsent in der amerikanischen Öffentlichkeit, in Radiosendern und in fast allen Zeitungen der USA. Und er hat auch Gouverneure und staatliche Gesetzgeber in Energie- und Umweltfragen beraten und auch den Präsidenten. Und wir freuen uns jetzt sehr auf seinen Beitrag.
Guten Morgen. First of all, congratulations on making it here. I feel like we've been in the middle of a James Bond novel for the past couple of days, ducking behind cars and side streets and doing our best to avoid the thugs who are out there waiting to shoot us down. It's not too far from the truth. And yet here, I just found out about an hour and a half ago where we'd be meeting, and nevertheless, we have full seats. So congratulations, thank you so much for your perseverance, standing up for free speech and academic freedom in the face of those who would take it away from us. They're not very smart though, are they? Here's some advice to our thug friends out there. If you wish to shut down someone's speech rights and academic freedom, show up with your intimidation tactics on the day of the event, not 2 weeks beforehand. We can find another venue. We may be having to go through, jumping through some hoops to find it, but we're here. If they were a little more intelligent, they would have shown up today rather than 2 weeks ago. Oh, wait a second. I see there's a Dungeons and Dragons convention going on today. That might explain why they're not here. When you live in your mama's basement, a Dungeons and Dragons convention is a very important thing, and probably more important than your protest and your thuggish tactics. Anyway, all kidding aside, it is quite astonishing that in 2019, still we would have to be in hiding. We'd have to meet in secret to avoid people taking away our rights to present science, our rights to gather and just meet. We're not out on the streets protesting. We're not doing anything that's infringing on anybody's rights or even inconveniencing anyone. We're just meeting to discuss science, and people would try to take those rights away. Now, in the United States, dealing with climate alarmism, it's much like I imagine around the world, at least from what I've seen. What we're trying to do is replace propaganda with scientific evidence. And it's much harder than it seems, unfortunately. But here's the thing that's most important to convey to people. There's a thing called the scientific method. Most of us learned it when we were in grade school. Hopefully, most of us remembered it. Under the scientific method, we make observations. We formulate theories. And then we test them rigorously. We try to find holes and flaws in our own theories. And if we can't, then we invite others to do so. That's conducting science. And yet in today's day and age, they flipped it on its head. The climate alarmists say that if you conduct their theory to scientific scrutiny, you're attacking science. No, we're not. We're performing science. And all the speakers that you see today will be performing science. When the day comes that people who test scientific theories are accused of attacking science and attacking scientists, that's the day science dies. But congratulations to all the speakers today who will be performing science and making sure that science lives on. Now, I'd like to present a few slides that demonstrate what we're up against in the United States, combating alarmism there. And I'm going to skip through a few of these because with so many speakers here on the schedule, I'm getting a little less time than anticipated, but that's a wonderful thing because it means we have more fantastic speakers coming up. But the first topic I'd like to address about climate alarmism in the United States is there's a push now to make the claim that climate change is causing droughts in areas that force refugees into the United States. When people come across our southern border, oftentimes illegally, the claim in the media and by climate alarmists is it's our fault because we're creating drought around the world that gives farmers no choice but to flee their lands and come to the United States. Here, for example, this is an article that is from the UK Guardian from October 30th of last year. It's called "The Unseen Driver Behind the Migrant Caravan, Climate Change." And the subtitle is, "While violence and poverty have been cited as the reasons for the exodus, experts say the big picture is that climate change is forcing farmers off their land, and it's likely to get worse." In fact, Beto O'Rourke, who was one of the Democratic presidential candidates, frequently made his stump speech saying that people down in Central America, it's not their fault, it's our fault in the United States because we created the climate change that's making it impossible for farmers to grow crops. NBC News said basically the same thing. Central America's choice, pray for rain or migrate. Ravaged by drought, farmers in Honduras and Guatemala live on the edge of hunger. Well, let's take a look at Honduras and Guatemala. Let's perform science. Let's engage in the scientific method and see what's really going on. This is crop data from the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization. What you see going from the left to the right from 1961 to 2017 is crop output in Guatemala. You don't see anything resembling a climate crisis that's causing a decline in crop production. In fact, crop production is in long-term, mid-term, and short-term increase and setting records nearly every year. The same applies for Honduras. What you see, especially in the last 10 years, is crop production that is astronomical. The problem is in the United States and elsewhere, they read the media stories, and the media and the climate alarmists count on people not to go and look at the actual data. It's our duty to present that data, because if people are informed, people are intelligent, they'll make the right decisions, they'll see through the fraud. But if they don't have access to the data, then they believe this is really the case instead of this. And it's not just Guatemala and Honduras. Elsewhere in Central America, here's crop production in Ecuador. Again, steep, dramatic increases in productivity. Mexico, same thing. Nicaragua, same thing. Panama, the same thing. All of these nations throughout Central America, you see increasing crop production and records being set nearly every year. Yet the media tell us something entirely opposite. And most Americans believe the opposite of the truth. It's also the case in the United States. Here's a National Geographic article, "Food Security is National Security." And the argument is that climate change is imperiling crop production in the United States, threatening our national security. Well, here's the same data for the United States. We see records being set virtually every year. Again, it's a battle of scientific evidence versus propaganda. And it's not just that I cherry-picked any particular nations. Here is United Nations crop data. This goes back to 2010, but the same pattern holds true going back many decades. What you see is a consistent increase in crop production and records being set virtually every year. This is scientific evidence and truth versus propaganda. Another alarm that's been recently promoted in the United States is the assertion that climate change is causing the Great Lakes to dry up. This is an article from National Geographic from 2012. The title is Warming Lakes. Climate change and variability drive low water levels on the Great Lakes. It's all climate change's fault. This chart here, unfortunately, you can't really see the date so much, but you're going from left to right. On the far right is today's date. 2012, when this article was written, is when you see in Superior and Huron, Michigan, the two top charts, a slight dip in water levels. Of course, you did not see that in Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, the other Great Lakes. So when they had that slight dip, the media claimed that climate change is to blame and we can expect more of it. But now look at the far right. What you see is that today, as we speak, there is a record amount of water throughout the Great Lakes. So do you think the media reports that now? Here's what the media says now in 2019. Why are water levels on the Great Lakes fluctuating so wildly? Low water levels were a crisis. Low water levels were everything we had to fear. And when water levels are high, oh no, they're fluctuating. This is bad that we have so much water in the Great Lakes. Again, it's the United States and really throughout the world that we're battling propaganda with scientific evidence. This is funny too. This is Federated Insurance. The insurance companies make a great deal of money by scaring people about climate change and charging higher rates. So here in 2019, remember this article's 2012, they raised a false alarm, which proved to be short-term and not true. In 2019, Federated Insurance puts an article out saying what's more concerning is that as of April 2015, the Great Lakes have already lost about 30 centimeters of their navigation depth, putting a strain on vessels and the future availability of water resources. This article was published just 2 months ago, and yet they deceitfully reference back to 2015 when water levels were low and pretend that the record water levels exist now don't occur. They're counting on people not to find out the scientific evidence and to educate themselves. This is the battle we fight each and every day. I'm going to skip through a few more slides, but take on a few more of the scientific myths that are taking shape in the United States. In the United States, we often get hit by hurricanes. We just went through the longest period in recorded history without a major hurricane, Category 3 or higher. When that happened, the media didn't talk about it much. But of course, now that we have resumed getting hurricanes, the media tries to blame global warming for every hurricane that occurs. So here's a CNN article from September of this year. Climate change makes storms like Dorian, a recent hurricane, more dangerous. But even the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change admits, quote, there is low confidence in any observed long-term increases in tropical cyclone activity, either intensity, frequency, or duration. And there you see the chart of hurricane frequency going down over time. Again, the media tell us one thing. Most people believe it because they see it on CNN, but the facts and even the United Nations tell us a different story. Same thing regarding tornadoes. Here's an article from the Washington Post earlier this year. Extreme weather has made half of America look like Tornado Alley. That's pretty frightening. Half of America becoming a tornado alley? And of course, the article blames climate change, global warming. But here's the facts. On the right, you see a chart of tornadoes, all tornadoes, going back to 1954. You don't see any increase. And even the United Nations IPCC acknowledges, quote, there is low confidence in observed trends in small spatial scale phenomena, such as tornadoes. In this chart is the violent tornadoes, F3 or stronger. You see a significant decline in strong tornadoes. And yet the Washington Post scares the American people with propaganda that contradicts objective evidence. I'll finish up on the individual crises that we have to deal with, the propaganda, by talking about drought. I'm going to move forward to this article. This was in Carbon Brief last year. Climate change is already making droughts worse. Well, here you see, let's talk about the United States, which this article focuses on. Here you see data from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. The yellow lines, the yellow chart, is drought conditions, where a percentage of the country that's very dry. So where you see the yellow bars going down quite far, that is extreme drought throughout the United States. What you see on the far right are today's conditions. And what you also see is that it has been approximately 40 years since 40% or more of the United States has experienced very dry conditions. That is by far the longest period in recorded history. In fact, if you look back prior to 40 years ago, you would see those conditions occurring at least every decade, usually several times per decade. Yet, according to the media, climate change is already making droughts worse. The evidence shows something entirely different. A couple other points I'd like to make. This is the International Journal of Climatology, a peer-reviewed study. It says from 1951 to 2010, for most of the conterminous United States, drought frequency appears to have decreased during the 1901 through 2014 period. Again, the scientific evidence shows droughts are becoming less frequent and severe. Carbon Brief tells us something different. Also, in 2017, according to USA Today, drought in the U.S. fell to a record low this week, with just 6.1% of the lower 48 states currently experiencing such dry conditions, federal officials announced Thursday. Now, we can go topic after topic after topic that the climate alarmists like to present. But what we see time and again is there's a propaganda effort that they count on people believing because they hear it in the news but don't access the actual facts. Fortunately, we have the internet available. Not just the experts, the scientists who will be speaking throughout this conference, but common people can go and find the truth. And I encourage you to share that information, share the truth and share ways of finding the truth with people, because that is the only way that the scientific method will prevail. Sound science and truth will win out. But if we get the information to people, people are intelligent, people make wise decisions, and ultimately truth will win out. One final note, I'm going to skip through to the end here. I encourage you on your own and to share with people what you saw me presenting today on droughts, tornadoes, hurricanes, etc. These are issues that sometimes politicians get ambushed with. They get the gotcha questions. And where do they find a quick source for this information? Also, students, teachers that get inundated with this false information. We are presenting at the Heartland Institute a new website. It's called climateataglance.com. You're seeing a screenshot of it now. Nothing's up there yet, but it's going to be up very soon. And what we're going to present, here is an example, are single-page summaries, scientific summaries of each global warming subpoint. So when people want to learn about hurricanes and what the truth is, or tornadoes, or temperature trends in the United States, they're going to get a concise document that they can digest very quickly, but also is scientifically well-sourced, scientifically compelling. So you have quick bullet points, a short summary, and a good visual to explain it. I hope that you will look this up. It'll be going live in a month or two. Share it with your friends. Share it with your neighbors. This is how we're going to prevail on the science. With that, I thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the program.
Herzlichen Dank, Mr. Taylor. Wer möchte denn dazu etwas sagen? Niemand. Also, war sehr überzeugend, keine Gegenrede.